I want you to see this the way I lived it, not the way a headline framed it. 12 million people were watching live. The red light over the courtroom camera was glowing, and in less than 60 seconds, 2 police officers were about to slam my head into a federal courtroom door because they decided a black man in a suit did not belong there. So let me ask you before we start if the people sworn to protect a courthouse feel bold enough to assault the presiding judge on live television. What do you think happens off camera to people with no title, no robe, no platform? Yeah, sit with that. My name is Michael Washington. I am a federal judge, a black man, a son of a cop, and for a long time I believed the system with all its cracks and stains could still be pushed towards something that looked like justice if we were patient and disciplined and did everything the right way. This is the story of the day that belief got broken open, tested, and somehow rebuilt into something stronger and harder to ignore. That morning in Chicago felt like history even before I opened my car door. News trucks lined the block, satellite dishes tilted to the sky, cables tangled across the sidewalk, producers pacing with clipboards, anchors rehearsing phrases like landmark case and pivotal moment for police accountability. They were careful, polished, almost excited. The National Court Network was broadcasting gavel to gavel. Ratings would be good. Stakes were higher than they let themselves admit. The part they did not say out loud, at least not at first, was simple. The man at the center of this case, the one killed at a so-called routine traffic stop, was my father, Robert Washington, 25 years with the Chicago Police Department. Not perfect, no one is, but no brutality complaints, no scandal, no whisper of corruption. He was the guy rookies went to when they were tired of the locker room talk and wanted to remember why they pinned on the badge. He taught me to shake hands firm, to look people in the eye, to never lie on paper no matter who asked, and to believe that the law meant something even when the people using it did not. On March 15, 2021, my father left my son's birthday party and never made it home. Officers said his taillight was out. It wasn't. They said he was combative. He wasn't. They said he reached for a weapon. He didn't. He did what every black parent tells their kids to do, what cops themselves say is the right way. Hands on the wheel, calm voice announces his movements, identifies himself as retired law enforcement, reaches slowly for his ID. 3 bullets, all in his back. Internal Affairs read the report, shrugged, called it justified. The body cameras malfunctioned. End of file. My mother got a folded flag and a story that did not sound anything like the man she had shared a bed with for 30 years. So I did what I was trained to do. I did not burn anything down. I did not go on TV screaming. I filed motions. I pushed for federal review. I read every word of every so-called investigation, every contradiction, every missing timestamp. I went to sleep as Judge Washington, but I woke up every morning as Robert Washington's son, wondering if faith in a broken system made me principled or a fool. Then one day, deep in discovery, a federal tech finds something on an archive server. A file misnamed, tucked away, never disclosed. They play it. The cameras had worked. The footage existed. For 2 years, the truth sat on a hard drive while people told us to move on. You know that feeling when the world shifts half an inch, but it feels like an earthquake in your chest? Yeah, that. We watched my father do everything right. We watched the officers escalate anyway. We watched him die in real time, not as a rumor, not as a narrative, but as evidence. After that, there was no maybe. There was only, what are you going to do now? I built a wall between that pain and my work because I had to. Ethics panels, review committees, colleagues, they all circled. Some meant well, some didn't. I stayed away from early hearings, refused to touch the case while a new investigation took shape. But this was a federal courthouse, and sooner or later someone had to preside. Someone who understood the law, someone who understood the stakes, someone who could not be bullied off the bench. They asked me. I did not say yes easily. I prayed. I argued with myself. I listened to my mother ask if this would break me. And in the end, I said yes, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the process forced into the light with no shortcuts, no winks, no, we'll handle this quietly. So here is where the cameras return. On the morning that trial is set to begin, I arrive early. Dark blue suit, white shirt, simple tie, the same worn leather briefcase I have carried for years. No robe yet. That goes on last inside chambers for a reason. It reminds me the authority belongs to the institution, not my ego. Inside the building is awake in that nervous way courthouses get on big days. Extra security, extra media, extra whispers. The National Court Network has a camera set in the hallway outside my courtroom live. A red light blinking a lens pointed straight at the heavy wood doors with my name on the brass plate. Producers are counting down. The number 12 million is floating through conversations like it's a character in the story. I walk past deputies who nod. They know me. Clerks who have seen me for years. Lawyers who stand a little straighter. This is my workplace, my house. Halfway down that hallway, she steps directly in front of me. "Sir, this is a restricted area during live broadcast. You can't be here." Officer Karen Rodriguez barks, hand sliding toward her baton. She's all posture, all edge, the kind of cop who thinks volume is a tool. Her partner, Officer Lisa Thompson, closes in on my other side. "Sir, I don't care what you think your rights are. You're interfering with a federal proceeding. Step back." This is the moment that tells you everything. Two armed officers in a federal courthouse see a black man in a suit carrying a briefcase 10 steps from a courtroom, and their first instinct is not, "Is this counsel?" Not, "Is this staff?" Not even, "Can I see your badge or ID?" Their first instinct is challenge BART control. I keep my voice calm. "Officer, I have every right to be here." They don't ask why. They don't ask who I am. They don't glance at the nameplate behind them that literally has my name engraved in brass. They look at my skin, my presence near power, and decide I don't belong. For a second, I look past them at the camera. The red light is still on. I tell myself that has to mean something, that nobody is reckless enough to cross that line on live television. Then it happens. Rodriguez grabs me by the shoulders and slams me into the oak doors. The sound rings out, wood, metal, bone, and the back of my head connects with the brass nameplate that says Judge Michael L. Washington. Pain flashes white. My briefcase flies. I hit the marble. Warm blood spills down my face in front of the whole country. Pattern interrupt in that instant. They still have no idea who they just put on the floor. I hear her spit out the magic words, those lines that turn up in too many reports. Subject was interfering, became combative, he fell. Flat, mechanical, like she's checking boxes she has rehearsed. I am staring at my own blood on the tile, feeling the world tilt, fighting through the migraine thunder just to move my hand. And all I can think is, they are writing the story again, and if I don't stand up now, they will win again. The courtroom doors fly open. Bailiff James Brown steps out, his usual steady expression gone the second he recognizes me. What the hell happened? His radio is already in his hand, calling for medics for backup, his voice dropping all pretense of formality. He was interfering, became aggressive, Rodriguez says, but her tone has lost that cold confidence. Doubt is creeping in. "Judge Washington, don't move," Brown says loud, clear, and that is the moment both officers' faces change, like someone cut their strings. "He's the judge," Lisa whispers. "Yeah, that happened." My head is splitting, but my mind is locked in. "Brown," I manage my briefcase. He tells me to lie still, wait for the ambulance. I shake my head. "Get me my briefcase." Rodriguez tries one last weak flex. "You need medical, not your paperwork." She still doesn't get it. Brown brings it. I flip it open with clumsy, bloody fingers and pull out that folded black robe. I have worn it 1,000 times, but never like this. Never with my blood on my collar and a country watching. "Help me up," I tell him. He hesitates. I repeat it, and there is no room to argue. He and Attorney David Johnson lift me slowly. The marble, the cameras, the staring faces, all of it sharp and unreal. The robe hangs heavy in my hands. I take my time unfolding it, letting every eye see exactly what it is. I put it on. Gasps ripple through the hall. A clerk covers her mouth. Someone drops a folder. Rodriguez goes pale. Thompson steps back. Like distance can undo what she did. I look straight into the camera. "My name is Judge Michael Washington." I say each word steady. "I am the presiding judge in the case scheduled in this courtroom, the case concerning the death of my father, retired Sergeant Robert Washington." Silence thick and electric. In that one beat, every lazy label, every quick assumption hits a wall. The man bleeding on the marble is not a stranger, not a suspect, not a prop. He is the judge. He is the victim's son. He is the system they claim to defend. If you were watching at home, what would you have thought in that moment? That it was a bizarre, isolated mistake? Or that maybe for once the mask slipped where everyone could see? Medics arrive. They push for a hospital. I let them clean the wound, check my vision, tape my head. The phone in Chambers is ringing off the hook. People from D.C., from the circuit, from oversight committees telling me to step back, to delay, to preserve perceptions. Here is the part nobody likes to say out loud: protecting the integrity of the system has been used to bury a lot of broken bones and bullet holes. Sitting there, blood drying on my collar, I understood that if I walked away, the story would become about my feelings, not their actions. They would say, "He's too close, too emotional," and the officers who killed my father would get to stand in a courtroom bathed in neutrality, as if everything that led us here was accidental. I was done with accidental, so I walked back into that courtroom robe on bandage bright against my skin, and I took my seat. Court is now in session. You could feel the tension humming. The jurors had seen the footage of the hallway on their phones or heard whispers. The defendants had certainly seen it. The lawyers knew every word could end up as a clip. Before we began, I said one thing. What happened to me this morning has been made public. It will be addressed under the law like any other crime. It does not change the standard of proof. In this case, it does not alter the rights of the defendants in front of you. Our job has not changed. We are here to determine whether Officers Murphy and Wilson unlawfully took the life of Robert Washington. We will do that work. Then the evidence started. The prosecution called witnesses who knew my father, but they did not dwell there. This was not a sainthood hearing. This was about facts. Then David Johnson played the body cam footage Internal Affairs never found. The jury watched a quiet street at 8:47 p.m. My father's sedan pulling over, both taillights glowing. They heard him speak politely. They heard Murphy invent a violation. They saw my father stay calm, hands visible. They heard him say, "I'm retired CPD, I'm going to reach for my ID slowly." They saw his movements measured and controlled. They watched Wilson raise her weapon. 3 shots in his back. No weapon, no charge, no lunge. Just a man standing where he had every right to be. The sound in that courtroom when the clip ended was its own verdict. The defense did what they always do. They said split-second decisions like a prayer. They said officer safety like a shield. They tried to read attitude into my father's calm questions. They tried to turn his existence into a threat. When the time came, I asked their attorney, "Show this court the exact frame in which a reasonable fear of imminent deadly harm is supported by the evidence." He couldn't. He mumbled theory. Theory does not beat video. Internal Affairs. Detective Thompson admitted she signed off without ever seeing that footage. She admitted body cam malfunctions seemed to happen most around controversial uses of force. She admitted that if the video had been pulled when it should have, we would not be in that room 3 years later. An FBI agent laid out how the file had been mislabeled, how logs showed manual interference, how a captain had encouraged giving officers the benefit of the doubt before viewing hard evidence. This was not a bad night. This was a bad system. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. The jury went out to deliberate. In the hallway, cameras chased commentators while social media split wide open. Some people called me a hero. Some called me biased. Some said convicting these officers would send a chilling message to law enforcement. Funny how nobody worried about the chilling message my father's body sent to the rest of us. 3 hours later, they came back. In the case of the People versus Officer Sandra Murphy on the charge of second-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. In the case of the People versus Officer Jennifer Wilson on the charge of second-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. There was a beat where no one breathed. Then the pressure broke. Tears, gasps, shock prayers. On TV, anchors stumbled over words like historic. In the gallery, my mother clutched a handkerchief like it was a lifeline. Even some officers in uniform did not look angry. They looked tired, like somebody had finally said out loud what they had known and been afraid to touch. I sentenced Murphy and Wilson to 25 years to life in federal prison without parole. That number was not about my rage. It was about their lies, their abuse of power, the years of cover-up, the message carved into every second of that footage. Then I turned to Rodriguez and Thompson, brought into my courtroom in orange jumpsuits instead of Navy uniforms, charged with assaulting a federal judge, violating civil rights, obstructing justice. Every angle of what they did to me was recorded. Their unions did not even try to spin it. They pled guilty. I told them, for the record, you did not put your hands on me because you knew who I was. You put your hands on me because you assumed I was nobody who mattered. That is the crime. Not that you misidentified a judge, but that you felt entitled to brutalize a stranger and trust the story to cover you. The only reason it failed is because the cameras were live and the wrong man wore the robe. 10 years. Lifetime ban from law enforcement. Some people cheered. Others said they were made examples of. They were. That is the point. But the real shockwave was not inside that room. It was what happened when everyone went home and the footage did not stop playing. Congress convened emergency hearings. Families from across the country brought pictures of sons and daughters lost in traffic stops and no-knock raids that never got this level of attention. The Robert Washington Police Accountability Act moved from draft to fight to law. Federal oversight for departments with patterns of abuse, mandatory body cams with real penalties for tampering a national database so fired officers could not quietly resurface 2 towns over with a fresh badge. The FBI opened a national review into malfunctioning cameras. A lot of old stories cracked open. Departments were forced to admit how often crucial footage conveniently went missing when things went wrong. In Chicago, the superintendent announced full retraining on de-escalation, cultural competency, constitutional rights. Officers who could not or would not adapt started leaving or being shown the door. Some union leaders raged on TV. Others quietly told me later they were relieved. The worst of their ranks had been costing them the public every single day. Across the country, some officers posted angry videos about being under attack. But something else happened too. Younger cops and veterans who still remembered why they signed up started saying publicly, "Good officers are not afraid of cameras. Good officers are not afraid of bad cops getting fired." 6 months later, I walked through that same marble hallway with a smaller bandage and a deeper scar, the physical one barely visible the other part of me now. The building had a new name, the Robert Washington Federal Courthouse. On the wall where my head hit a plaque reads, "Here justice chose courage over comfort." School groups came through to look at it. Some days I would watch from a distance as a teacher explained that a judge once got assaulted right there, that he kept going, that real accountability followed. The kids would stare at the spot, and for a second I could see their wheels turning. Who gets believed, who gets heard, what it takes to force change. The National Court Network won awards. Legal scholars wrote articles. Activists used our case in training. Police academies incorporated it into ethics modules. For once, the story of a black man killed by police did not end with a shrug or a settlement. It ended with a verdict and then began again as a blueprint. A year after the trial, I stood behind a podium at a national conference on police accountability. Chiefs, sheriffs, civil rights lawyers, grieving parents, young officers all in one room. I shared numbers. In departments that embraced reforms, shootings of unarmed civilians were down. Complaints were being investigated by independent bodies. Officers were finally being decertified for misconduct instead of quietly reassigned. I could see people sit up a little taller at that. Then I pulled it back. "Do not mistake progress for arrival," I told them. "It should not have taken a federal judge bleeding on a marble floor and a retired cop with a perfect record to get us here. It should not take the perfect victim or the respectable target to move your conscience. Because here is the controversial part, and I will not dodge it for your comfort. The system did not magically become fair because 4 officers went to prison and some laws got passed. There are still families out there who will never get the tape, never get the jury, never get their day in the sun. There are still officers who think a badge is a shield against consequences. There are still people ready to believe any report as long as it paints the victim as angry enough, big enough, inconvenient enough. So I am talking to you now wherever you are, on your phone, on your couch, in your car, on a lunch break, in a uniform, in a hoodie, in a suit. If it were you or your father or your kid in that car on that marble floor, what kind of justice would you want to exist? One where we sigh and say, we may never know the full story, or one where we roll the footage, check the files, and tell the truth, even when it embarrasses people in power? Do you think it's fair that my case became a turning point, partly because I was a judge, while so many nameless people were written off with no camera, no proof, no problem? You might agree with me. You might think the sentences were right. You might think we went too far, that officers will hesitate now that order will suffer. Say it. Put it in the comments. I would rather have the hard argument than your silence. Tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country. Tell me if you've ever been stopped or searched or spoken to in a way that made you feel less than human for no good reason. Tell me if you're in law enforcement and you're tired of carrying the weight of people who disgrace the badge. Tell me if you think I'm wrong, if you believe the system is already fair and this was an overcorrection. Share this story with someone who still says it's just a few bad apples, with someone who needs to see what happens when the tree finally shakes. Hit. Like if you believe accountability should not depend on job titles or skin color. Subscribe if you want more real stories, not sanitized press conferences. And if you've lived your own version of this, on the street, at a traffic stop, in a courtroom, in a precinct locker room, put it in the comments. Your story might be the next one that forces someone to pay attention. Because at the end of the day, real authority is not the power to hurt without consequence. It's the courage to stand in the light and answer for what you've done. You know what I mean?